In question 17, we're given three statements, which we're told are about lipid digestion in the small intestine. So here are our three statements, and we're asked which of them is correct. Now this question is slightly trickier than it would appear at first sight, because it's not assessing basic knowledge about this process of lipid digestion. It's actually trying to catch you out on a lot of the smaller details to do with these processes. So let's think about lipid digestion before we get into the statements to make sure that we'll be on the right footing. So if we think about an item of food which is passed through from the stomach into the duodenum, which is part of the small intestine, there's actually an input into the duodenum from two organs, the pancreas and the gallbladder. The pancreas introduces pancreatic juice into the duodenum, and the gallbladder introduces bile. And these have important functions in the digestion of lipids, because the pancreatic juice is involved in enzymatic breakdown because it releases lipase, an enzyme which breaks down the bonds in lipids in order to produce glycerol and fatty acids, which are the constituents of lipids. Whereas in the case of bile, it's involved in alkalinizing the stomach contents, which will have a very low pH, they'll be very acidic coming in from the stomach. And also it's involved in emulsification of fat, which is essentially breaking down larger particles into smaller globules to provide a larger surface area upon which the enzymes can work. So that's the process of lipid digestion, and now let's look at our three statements. So, emulsification by bile makes smaller lipid droplets, now we know this to be true, each with a smaller surface area. Now it's this smaller surface area which might catch you out. You might look at this and think that it's wrong, because as I mentioned, the whole purpose of emulsification is to produce a larger surface area for the enzymes to work. But as we can see by looking at the smaller globules versus the larger particle, there's clearly a smaller surface area in the case of each of these smaller globules. So the smaller lipid droplets do have a smaller surface area each, which is the purpose of emulsification. Okay, moving on to the second statement. It says that bile contains an alkali in order to reduce pH. Now, as I mentioned, there'll be a very low pH coming in from the stomach because low pH is more acidic, whereas bile will raise the pH because it's more alkaline. So the goal is to increase pH, not reduce pH. So 2 is wrong. Moving on to 3, lipase secreted in bile breaks down bonds in lipids into glycerol and fatty acids. Now, it is true that lipids are broken down into glycerol and fatty acids, so that might mislead you, but lipase is not secreted in bile. As I mentioned, the enzymes are in the pancreatic juice. So we can say that for this reason, statement 3 is wrong. So we can see that only statement 1 is correct, and therefore our answer is going to be option B.